Hello friends. I am glad to see you on my channel. Please like and subscribe to the channel. I promise you will be interested. In upstate New York lives the model family of Edward and Connie Samnari and their 8-year-old son Charlie. Their 11-year marriage is full of love, but a little monotonous on the lack of passion. Connie is a middle-aged housewife living the problems and concerns of her family. She is completely immersed in everyday life. Getting the baby ready for her husband's school to work, throwing a party, cooking breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Her husband Edward is a successful businessman, interested in making money and doing his business. The main thing is that the family doesn't need anything. Everything looks too sweet and monotonous. The duty phrases with his son and his wife, a peck on the cheek before he leaves for work.
Taxi! Taxi!
One day Connie is off to New York City, which is not happy with the weather. A frail woman carries packages. A strong wind knocks her off her feet. The damned cab drivers won't stop, either. At one point, a young guy Paul Martel shows up and Connie runs into him. Finding themselves in an awkward situation, they both start packing up each other's things. Connie asks the young man to help her stop the cab. However, all attempts are in vain. Seeing that the woman has scraped her knees, the gallant Frenchman offers Connie to go up to his apartment to treat the wounds. She hesitates, but the guy looks so charming that the heroine cannot resist. Here she learns that the young man is 27 years old, lives in an acquaintance's apartment and sells books. Connie treats her wounds and after a kind conversation Paul Martel gives her a book. A souvenir of such a funny acquaintance. In the evening she tells her husband about what happened, that a young guy helped her. Edward offers to thank him by sending him a bottle of inexpensive wine. The next day Connie finds his phone number in the book Marcel gave her. Connie goes to town, thinks long and hard, and eventually calls Martel. She wants to get his address so she can thank him and send him a little present. However, the guy doesn't even let her finish speaking and invites her to his place. Once again in his apartment, we see a mutual attraction to each other. The young guy shows her braille and tries to seduce her. At the most responsible moment, however, Connie says she has to go. On the way home, she stops by Edward's work, gives him a sweater, and tells him that she has decided to go into auctions. At home in the evening, Edward notices that Connie is very thoughtful. The next day we see Connie come to Paul's house. They dance together, and the guy seduces her again. At one point, Connie says she made a mistake. What do you mean wrong? Are you doing something or not doing something? It's better not to. Connie leaves, then comes right back and says she forgot her coat. At this point they both throw themselves at each other. We see Connie coming home. She feels great guilt and shame about the betrayal, and at the same time great joy. After all, this is exactly what she lacked in her marriage of passion and thrill. Do you love me? Of course I do. That's a silly question. I'll be there soon. Oh, I'm sorry. Next, Connie begins to see her lover more and more often and even gives him a souvenir her husband once gave her. For Connie Samner, playing on two fronts becomes like an obsession. She is overcome by long-forgotten emotions. Now she is successful in her intimate life with her lover. Successful in married life with her husband. One day Paul takes her to a restaurant for lunch. There, Connie says she shouldn't be here with him. At a nearby table, two men are arguing about who will pay the bill, and Paul says if they pay that left they stay. The situation ends up going against Connie and the man who paid the bill turns out to be Edward's coworker. As time passes, the husband begins to notice changes in his wife's behavior. At first, Connie rejects Edward when he shows her affection. Later he notices that his wife is making beautiful lingerie and new shoes. Edward asks her to meet him for lunch, but she says that she has an appointment at a beauty salon. Suspecting his wife, Edward calls the salon and becomes convinced that Connie was lying. Meanwhile, Connie is on her way to Martel's once again, and at the most inopportune moment she meets her longtime girlfriends right outside her lover's doorstep. They entice Connie to have coffee with them and before she can think of an excuse, she is forced to go to the cafe. Connie calls Martel and tells him that he is at the cafe across the street and will be at his place a little later. He, without thinking long, arrives at the establishment and begins to embarrass her. A little later, they get intimate right in the bathroom. It turns out a very comical situation, because Connie's girlfriends noticed Marcel at the bar, and one of them said that she would love to lie down under such a handsome man. The other, on the other hand, recounted her personal experience when such a little affair ruined her family. By great coincidence, Edward gets into a little trouble on work matters because of the very Bill who saw Connie with Martel. In a small confrontation, Bill tells him to keep a better eye on his family, which once again makes Edward suspicious. As a result, he turns to a private investigator and asks him to start tailing his wife. Chick mom. That chick. He's on fire. It boiled. Mom boiled. Thank you. In the evening at dinner, Edward informs his wife that he is leaving for another city for work the next day and will be absent for 24 hours. She is not able to see him, so she has to go back to the city. Getting caught in the lens of private detective Frank Wilson's camera at the same time. As Connie's visits become more frequent, she is late to pick up Charlie from school and realizes that she can no longer continue this relationship. She makes an attempt to end it with Paul. At this point, however, she is thwarted by her son Charlie. Meanwhile, Connie's husband is dating Frank. Edward is completely devastated when a private investigator provides pictures of Connie and Paul together. Go to sleep. Don't be sad, Mama. Papa is coming tomorrow. A married woman, realizing that her affairs must stop, decides to tell Martel in person and goes to see him. On the way, she sees Paul running away from the rain into the library with some woman. She jumps out of the car and runs straight to them. Realizing that she may not be alone with the young Frenchman, she attacks the girl. A little later, while in the elevator alone with Paul, she asks him how many women like her he has. But Paul avoids answering the question and tells Connie that the other woman is just a friend and nothing more. She then tells Martel that she doesn't want to see him anymore and mentions that their affair is over. When she runs out of Paul's apartment, however, he manages to stop Connie. He pins her against the wall and begins to seduce her. At first Connie tries to resist Paul's harassment, but eventually she gives in to him and they engage in intimacy again in the hallway of his apartment. Leaving her lover, Connie nearly confronts her husband right in the entryway, who has arrived to confront Paul. After a while, Edward comes up and knocks on the door. Paul Martel? Yes. How old are you? Eventually Martel lets him into his apartment. The young Frenchman talks about how his wife, Connie, shared with him that they were bored with their marriage, that she lacked passion and was tired of living in the suburbs. The deluded husband looks around himself, asks ticklish questions, and sees the bed where it all happened. He is literally stunned to find the snow globe he gave his wife in the past, which, as Paul explains, Connie gave him. Edward freaks out, loses control of himself and kills the Frenchman with a single blow with the glass ball. And then the fun begins. While cleaning up the evidence, a phone call rings and his wife, sobbing, leaves a message for Paul, mentioning that she is tired of lying and hurting her family and that she is sorry, but must put an end to this case for good. He erases the messages from the body by wrapping it in a rug and taking it out and putting it in the trunk of his car. Afterward, Edward goes to his son's performance, along the way washing off the evidence in the school bathroom. Check to see if it opens. No, it's fine. Check the trunk, though. We'll figure it out tomorrow. It'll just take a second. At night Edward goes to the junkyard, where he gets rid of Marcel's body. And next we see him tormented by memories of the young boy's murder. NYPD detectives arrive at Connie Edwards' house. They ask Connie if she knows Paul Martel. They report that they found her phone number on his desk and that he is missing. The police put out an APB on him. The family doesn't know where he is. Martel's wife, who turns out to be living separately, informs them that he is missing. Connie says she didn't know him very well, wanted to buy a couple of books from him. And that was the end of it. When the detectives leave, Connie gets rid of the book Martel gave her. A week later, the police raid the Sumner house again to reveal that Paul's body has been discovered. Edward and the detectives notice that Connie is suddenly distraught upon hearing the news. Connie begins to lie that she met Paul at music school, which, to her surprise, Edward himself confirms. Asked by the police if she has ever been to the Soho neighborhood where Paul lived, she says she has never been there. However, the detectives present her with a parking ticket received 4 weeks ago right outside Martel's driveway. To this, Connie says evasively that she had coffee with her friends. Edward asks the detectives to stop pressuring his wife and says they told them everything they knew. He then asks them to leave. A few days later, Connie finds Detective Frank Wilson's picture in Edward's belongings and realizes that her husband knew about her cheating. And a little later she notices that the glass ball she gave to her lover has returned to their collection. Sharing a meaningful look with Edward, she realizes that he is the one who killed Paul Marcel. Later, Connie asks Edward to tell her what he did to Paul. To which Edward says that he knew about her cheating. He gave up everything for his family and she ruined it all in one day. He says he wanted to kill her instead of Martel. A very interesting moment happens a little later when Connie finds Edward's love note in that very glass balloon in their family picture with baby Charlie. This picture was supposed to fall into Connie's hands on their silver wedding anniversary. When Connie burns the found pictures of her and Paul, Edward says he will turn himself into the police. But Connie objects, saying they'll find a way to move on. They can get back to a normal life together. The last moments of the movie show us Edward pulling over at a red light and Charlie asleep in the backseat. Connie whispers that they can leave the country, change their names and start a new life, raising Charlie and living by the ocean for the rest of their lives. Edward comforts her while she cries. Next, we see Edward pull the car over outside the police station. If you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment and like it. See you soon.